Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So a new bill was just recently reintroduced that would actually increase payments for Social Security beneficiaries. Now, last time this was in Congress, it actually had over 200 co-sponsors. So this bill had a lot of support previously. So we're going to be discussing what's in the bill and the chances of this thing actually passing. Also yesterday, in regards to raising the debt ceiling in those negotiations that are currently going on between President Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy and their staffers. We're going to be going over some news on that as well. And we actually have some surprisingly good news. A lot of them think they can perhaps wrap up negotiations as early as today. We'll just have to wait and see, but we're going to be covering that as well. But before I go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Okay, so as I just mentioned, of course, yesterday, once again, they were meeting virtually for the debt ceiling negotiations. That date, according to the Treasury Secretary and Janet Yellen, is June 1st, so that is coming up very soon. Next week, they have to raise the debt ceiling. And this is going to take some time because, once again, once they come to an agreement, they still have to write the bill. That's going to take anywhere between 1 to 2 days to write up the entire bill. Then once the bill is written, each member of the House of Representatives has to be given at least 3 days to read over the bill before they vote on it. And then they have to pass it to the Senate. In the Senate, that needs at least 60 votes out of the 100 senators. And then they have to send it to President Joe Biden's desk to be signed into law. So even though there is about 7 days, this is going to take some time. They are on a very tight timeline, but according to some experts very close, speaking anonymously on the negotiations, they are getting close and they might be able to wrap this thing up today. So we'll just have to wait and see. According to some experts, they are still trying to debate on one issue, but they are getting much closer. So according to Reuters, Biden and McCarthy appeared near two-year deal on U.S. debt ceiling as default looms. So U.S. President Joe Biden and top congressional Republican Kevin McCarthy are closing in on a deal that would raise the government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling for 2 years while capping spending on most items, a U.S. official told Reuters. The White House is considering scaling back its plan to boost funding at the Internal Revenue Service to hire more auditors and target wealthy Americans, the official said. A second U.S. official said IRS funding is an open issue, but the main thrust is ensuring the agency executes the president's priorities, even if there is a small haircut or funding is moved around. The final deal would specify the total amount the government could spend on discretionary programs like housing and education, according to a person familiar with the talks, but not break that down into individual categories. The two sides are just $70 billion apart on a total figure that would be well over $1 trillion, according to another source. The deal would only set broad spending outlines, leaving lawmakers to fill in the blanks in the weeks and months to come. Biden has resisted Republican proposals to stiffen work requirements for anti-poverty programs and loosen oil and gas drilling rules, according to Democratic Representative Mark DeCano. Representative Kevin Hern, who leads the powerful Republican Study Committee, told Reuters a deal was likely by Friday afternoon. So at some point later on today, we might actually have a deal. So this is actually really good news because it wasn't long ago that it seemed like the two sides were very far apart, but now it seems like they might be able to come to some sort of an agreement today. Now, again, June 1st is that deadline, but we do have other sources coming out saying it might be really like June 8th or June 15th. So Donald Schneider, who is the deputy head of U.S. policy at Piper Sandler, he sent out a tweet yesterday. He said the new X date estimate is actually going to be more like June 9th, where they're going to have $2 billion on hand. On June 2nd, they're going to have around $10 billion on hand. So this figure is probably more like June 9th. They really probably have a few more days than June 1st. But again, lawmakers on both sides really had their heads set on that June 1st deadline. Now, once they do come to an agreement, if it is today or maybe tomorrow, they're not really going to please everyone because members on the far left and the far right are both pretty upset at the prospect of some sort of agreement because far-right Republicans wanted more spending cuts in order to raise the debt ceiling, and members of the far left of the Democratic Party, they wanted less cuts and no cuts at all. They wanted to raise the debt ceiling without any cuts at all. So they're really going to be relying on the people closer to the center to vote on this bill and get it to pass, because we're not going to have all Republicans or all Democrats vote in favor of this bill just because they're not going to be able to please all members of both parties. That's just the reality of things. But at least if they're able to come to an agreement, raise the debt ceiling, at least we can avoid all this economic disaster that would take place if we defaulted in our debts, which includes possibly these Social Security payments not being sent out on time. So it's really going to be good, at least if they can raise the debt ceiling, just to avoid all the disaster that could possibly take place. Now, in some other news, just a few days ago, there was a plan that was renewed in this new Congress for 2023 to 2024. Previously, this was already introduced, so this is just being reintroduced. Now, previously, in the previous bill, it actually had over 200 co-sponsors, so it had a lot of support. This bill is by John Larson and would actually increase payments for Social Security beneficiaries. So a lot of people are on board with this. It would also change the way in which the cost of living adjustments are calculated. So each and every year, on average, you should be receiving a little bit more. And this bill really does a lot. And it also pushes back the solvency date for Social Security as well. So right now it is expected that Social Security will be insolvent within the next 10 years, say like 2033. This bill pushes that date back as well. So according to CNBC, House Democrats looking to renew plan to expand Social Security say debt ceiling fight hurts seniors the most. So House Democrats on Tuesday slammed Republicans for putting Social Security benefits at risk amid an ongoing federal debt ceiling stalemate, while also re-upping a plan that aims to tackle Social Security's looming funding shortfall. Quote, "This tactic of holding the economy hostage hurts seniors the most," said Representative John Larson at an event to reintroduce his legislation, the Social Security 2100 Act. The bill calls for making Social Security benefits more generous by increasing taxes on the wealthy. The Social Security 2100 Act aims to extend the program's solvency, though estimates are not yet available for how long it could prolong the program's funding. The latest version of the bill was expected to extend the program to 2038, so that would just be another 5 years. In contrast, the Sanders and Warren plan would extend the solvency through 2096. So the plan by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren is a different one than this one. We've talked about that one before on this channel. In their bill, they would actually be increasing benefits by $200 every single month. In this plan by John Larson, it would increase benefits by just 2%. So not nearly as much as $200, but at the end of the day, it still would raise benefits. But if you're looking at the two plans, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, it pushes the solvency date all the way back to 2096. This one by Larson, only 2038. Sanders' plan raises benefits by $200 per month. The one by Larson raises benefits by just 2%. So obviously the one by Bernie Sanders is a little bit more generous, but we're going to be talking about the one by John Larson in today's video. So a key difference between the two plans is how they affect higher taxes. The Sanders and Warren plan calls for reapplying Social Security payroll taxes for incomes of more than $250,000. In contrast, Social Security 2100 would apply those taxes to earnings of more than $400,000, in keeping with President Joe Biden's promise not to raise taxes for households with annual incomes below that threshold. Social Security 2100 also calls for adding an additional 12.4% net investment income tax for taxpayers making more than $400,000. In addition, the bill would introduce a host of expansions to benefits. The Social Security 2100 Act would increase all benefits by 2% for the program's more than 65 million beneficiaries. It also seeks to make benefits more generous for elderly beneficiaries who have been receiving benefits for 15 years or more, as well as low-income seniors and widows and widowers from two-income households. It would repeal rules that reduce benefits for some public workers and their spouses, known as the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset. It would also increase access to benefits for children who live with grandparents or other relatives, as well as restore student benefits up to age 26 for children of beneficiaries. The bill also calls for changing the way annual cost of living adjustments are measured, among other changes. So they would change this over to the CPI-E method from where it's currently at using the CPI-W method. On average, CPI-E is a little bit higher, so on average every single year you would be receiving slightly higher COLAs if they change it over to this method. Now, as you can see in the prior Congress, when this bill was introduced, it did have 202 co-sponsors. However, every single one of these 202 co-sponsors did happen to be Democrats. Not a single Republican supported this bill. And that's simply because of the fact that it would raise taxes on Americans who earn above $400,000 per year. So obviously, Americans that are already very well off, but Republicans are very much against raising taxes even on the wealthy. So more than likely, unless the Democrats are able to take back control of the House, it's unlikely this bill could pass in the House unless they're able to get at least 5 Republicans. These Republicans would obviously have to be more in the center. But at the end of the day, I just cannot see 5 Republicans moving across the line to support that bill. And of course, we do have a couple of other bills that would help with the Social Security solvency problem. We have the one by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, of course, that would increase benefits by $200 per month and would push the solvency date back to 2096. We talked about that on this channel. But again, they would need at least 5 Republicans to support that bill in the House in order to get it to pass. So that bill may not be that likely to pass. And then of course we have the bipartisan one right now, which would have that trust fund of $1.5 trillion, and it would invest into the US economy, and then it would use the investment earnings to fund Social Security and push back that solvency date as well. That bill probably has the best chance of passing just because it is considered bipartisan. We have members of the Republican and Democratic Party working on it. So we'll just have to wait and see whether or not they can get anything to pass. But let me know what your thoughts are on this bill in the comment section below, as well as the one by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Would love to hear your thoughts as usual. But that's all I have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video.